Okay, so today I'm reviewing the PlayStation Portable. The PlayStation Portable. Let's get into it.
You got the whole world in your hands.
Okay, so, first things first, I have something new to announce. I have a sponsor. That sponsor actually sent me this PlayStation Portable to review. And that sponsor is Main Street Games. Now, you may not have heard of Main Street Games. It is a smaller business, but it is a business you can check out nonetheless. Now, Main Street Games buys, sells, and trades games and other items. So, for starters, you know GameStop, how they'll have last gen and current gen games, but nothing before that? Well, Main Street Games has last gen, current gen, and almost every other gen before that, all the way back to the Atari. They even sell old systems, and they sell them at rather pretty good prices. Now, if you're interested in Main Street Games, you can actually check them out at facebook.com/Main Street Games. You can also find them on location at 705 Main Street, Winfield, Kansas 67156. If you need to call for any inquiries, you can call 620-705-5700. They have more than just video games as well. They also have Dungeons and Dragons books, equipment, and dice. They have Magic the Gathering cards, a lot of Magic the Gathering cards. They have slot cars, slot car accessories, and slot car bodies, where they also have their own slot car track that you can use. And they even have frisbees, different types of frisbees. I mean, if you can think about gaming, they pretty much have it all. Even have a movie section, for crying out loud. So if you're ever going through Winfield, Kansas, you can check out Main Street Games. Also, you can check them out on eBay here. They don't have anything on right now, but they are going to shortly. So even if you can't make your way to their physical location, you can check them out on eBay. So that being said, I'm going to continue with this review. Okay, so the PlayStation Portable came out at the end of the PlayStation 2 life cycle. And it lasted a surprisingly long time. I mean, this thing lasted till like 2012, 2011. I mean, and this came out in like 2005. So that's a really good life cycle for a portable that was going up against the juggernaut of Nintendo. Nintendo was the king of the handheld portable market. They still are with the Nintendo Switch. But there was a time when other companies were trying to beat Nintendo at their own game. At one point, they were trying to do it with like the cell phone video game hybrid with like the N-Gage and a couple others. I think like one was called the Gizmondo. But Sony decided to come up with their own portable, the PlayStation Portable, to go up against the Nintendo DS, 3DS, 2DS. I can't remember how many DSs they had, but they had a lot of portable consoles. And so, now, this was successful enough that it got a sequel to PlayStation Vita, although I'm pretty sure that Sony loved this far more than they loved the Vita. I mean, gosh, it sometimes feels like they are actively trying to murder the Vita in its sleep before it even got a chance to walk on its own two legs. I mean, Sony does not like the Vita. At least they liked this when it was a thing. And so, yeah, it's very clear they loved this far more than the Vita. Now, in terms of the build, the shape, the way it feels, it's actually really good. I mean, the size is not too big, but it's not too small either. The screen is about the same size as a smartphone screen would be. There are smartphone screens bigger than this now these days, but there's a lot of smartphone screens that are about this size. The feel and shape is, in my mind, just right. Now, how I have to hold this is with my middle finger and my index finger with my thumbs. That's really about it. My other ring and pinky fingers don't really touch it at all. But admittedly, it's not too heavy that it's a strain on my my two fingers actually, and it feels pretty nice. It's not too heavy, it's not too big, and overall, it's a good design, I have to admit. And it's surprisingly thin for a portable gaming system. I mean, this thing can fit in your pocket, not only your front pocket, but your back pocket as well. And a surprising thing is that this actually is the fattest model. The revisions were much thinner and sleeker as well. So, I mean, to this day, I'm still impressed with the size of this thing, even though this is old technology now. Now, in terms of how this looks, the tech behind this, essentially, in layman's terms, this was a PlayStation 2 crammed into this portable system, minus a few shortcuts. And at the time, that was insane. I mean, PlayStation 2, when it first came out, was this big, black, boxy type thing, and they did slim it out, but it still was a considerable size, much bigger than this. And so, yeah, they managed to squeeze it into this. Now, there are a couple of shortcuts they had to do, like case in point, the game discs can't hold as much information as a PlayStation 2 disc, so cutscenes typically couldn't be fit on here. There are games that do have cutscenes, but case in point, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops didn't have any cutscenes. It had like these drawing comic book type panel scenes because they didn't have the space to put a full anime cutscene on. Another area they had cut corners was like with blood. The PlayStation Portable couldn't do as much as a PlayStation 2, and so where they could cut corners is not have showing blood in some scenes, simply because that would require more graphical processing power. And so, but for the most part, most PlayStation Portable games looked like a PS2. A lot of them didn't look like a PlayStation 1, admittedly. But, I mean, that was just due to the developers. There were some PlayStation Portable games that looked like PS2 style games. And so that was impressive that you had that in the palm of your hand. Now, not all is perfect with this little sucker. See, one of the biggest problems is that this thing had only one analog stick. You heard that right. It had only one analog stick. Just one. You're probably thinking, how does that work? It doesn't really work. Not to the extent that you would like it. I like to imagine how that developer meeting went when they were designing the PlayStation Portable. Okay, well, I mean, it looks great. I have to admit, it feels great in my hands, but I gotta ask, why is there only one analog stick on this? I mean, is this like a prototype? Like an early model prototype or something? Oh, that's the final model we're releasing. Are you okay? Yes, I am. Why do you ask? Why are you looking over there? No reason. It feels fine in my hand. but you only have one hand. Well, don't shove it in my face. You don't have to be mean about it. Okay, how much would it cost for us to add another analog? That much. Can't get any because it's that late in development. Oh, okay. Eh, screw it. Let's see if people will just buy into it. I mean, it had to go something like that, right? I mean, who would design something with just one analog stick? And now, I have to give credit to the developers, the many developers, when they were designing games for this portable system. I mean, like there were developers that they would actually make the other analog stick like the face buttons right here. But then there were developers that decided so that you don't have to really look up and down, but you only need to look side to side, and so they would use these top shoulder buttons as the alternate camera. And so that was clever. There was a few developers, they weren't quite that bright, and they decided to make the D-pad right above the analog stick, the other analog stick. How do you control a game with the analog sticks right above each other on one side of what you're holding? I mean, that makes like no sense. Seriously? And yeah, it controls about as good as you think. It leads you to insanity and schizophrenia and, you know, full out homicidal rage. You know, thankfully not a lot of games have decided to do this mistake. So, now, that being said, the PlayStation Portable is much more than a video game player. It's admittedly a computer. I mean, I have to say it. You can store photos on here. You can choose a larger hard drive. So essentially, the storage are these little memory sticks that you can use. You basically slide it in to a port. This is a 2 gig. You can get much bigger sizes, and ultimately it's just limited to whatever size you can find. And you can store photos on here, videos, you can surf the web. This thing has Wi-Fi. I mean, hell, I even heard of one guy, they actually hacked into this and turned it into a phone. Can you imagine that? A phone. This thing turned into a phone. I mean, it would seem to me like it wouldn't be that good of a phone, although it does feel like a phone in your hand, admittedly. But, I mean, speaking of jailbreaking and hacking, apparently this thing has quite the jailbreaking community around it. I mean, a lot of people have really made these things emulation machines, and so basically every Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and PlayStation 1 game has been on this thing through emulation. And so I'm not really into emulation, but if you're into that, then I hear this thing is a dream to emulate for. Now, one of the interesting things is this didn't use cartridges and didn't use full disc. It used these special micro UMD discs that fit into this disk drive right here. And the interesting thing is that this disk drive wasn't really built that well, because I can't tell you how many times I have gone on eBay and I have found these PlayStation Portables and they say, oh yeah, disk drive is broken, or it's just completely gone. Yeah, it works great, just disk drive won't stay closed. Yeah, if you can find one of these in good condition, get it, you know. But yeah, the UMD discs were interesting because they had a plastic case that the disc was in, and there was only like this small opening that the disc read. And so typically these UMD discs, have no scratches because they have a plastic case over the back side. No fingerprints. Now, that little slot opening might have gotten some scratches or fingerprints, but for the most part, the whole thing usually looks great. And so, that's one nice thing about getting used games for this, is you don't really have to worry about the used game not working. Sometimes it might not, but it had a better success rate than other games, or other game systems, other media formats. It's just unfortunate that the UMD discs didn't take off. This was really the only thing that used the UMD discs, and ultimately I did like the UMD discs. I thought they were kind of cool. They were small and they stored an amazing amount of content on them. Now, in terms of the battery life, the charge on this thing actually lasts around 3 to 4 hours, which isn't amazing, but it's not too bad. If this has a full charge, then you can enjoy probably a day around town with this while you're waiting for appointments and whatnot. It's a perfect thing to use in a waiting room. Now, one of the cool things about this system is that because Sony kind of was invested into this system, they did put out for the games. Unlike the Vita, where if you're an action fan, you got like 5 games and that's it. For the PlayStation Portable, they had a lot of content for this thing. And some really impressive stuff. You had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different Metal Gear Solid games for this system. Yes, 2 that were called Metal Gear Acid, but it's still Metal Gear. I mean, you had a lot of Final Fantasy games on here, including the really awesome Dissidia Final Fantasy. Those were fun games. You had, Siphon Filter. You had 2 God of War games on this thing. There was a lot of content to sink your teeth into this one gaming system. And another surprising thing is when movie tie-in video games kind of started to die off, PlayStation Portable kind of gave movie tie-in video games a second life, because there was a lot of movies, they weren't really releasing stuff for the 360 or the PlayStation 3, but they were still releasing stuff for this. Movies like 300, Alien vs. Predator Requiem, Iron Man 2, although Iron Man 2 did get a release on consoles as well, but you get what I'm saying. A lot of movies did have movie tie-in games on this before they went to Android, and then they just ceased altogether. And so yeah, the lineup of games on this is really awesome and great, and it's a big selling point to this little system. Now, and the online service was pretty cool. You could download digital games onto your little memory stick, and you could even get PlayStation 1 games to play on here. So if there were some classic PlayStation 1 games you wanted to play as, like Silent Hill, you could play it on this system. Metal Gear Solid, you could play it on here. There are a lot of PlayStation games you can, like PlayStation original games, you can play on this system through the online store. The one problem though, Sony is shutting down the online store for this system this July in the year 2021. So if you're at all interested in any of the digital only games or the PlayStation 1 games available on this system, you should probably move quick because it's shutting down really soon. And so that's unfortunate, because that is kind of one of the cool selling points of this, is you can play PlayStation 1 games on this, and that's no longer going to be an option unless you want to jailbreak this thing and do it through emulation. Now the good news, a lot of physical games will still be able to work on this once the store shuts down. You just gotta find them physically. And I would say the physical content is worth the price of admission to this system. So overall, my problems with this system are severe, but the pros do kind of outweigh the cons. If you can move past the analog stick and also suffer through the learning curve, because trust me, there is a learning curve when working with a game system that has only one analog stick. But if you get past all that, you will find a really great portable system that will do what it needs to do when you're waiting for a friend to show up, waiting in a doctor's office waiting room, waiting for a train to arrive, waiting for anything. This system will suit your needs just fine. So, big thanks again to Main Street Games. My name is Chris with 11 Hour Reviews, and this will be all.